All right. Good evening, and welcome to our 10th Annual Historic Preservation Symposium. We are very glad you're here. As in past years, the town hosts a Historic Preservation Symposium in the month of May. May is nationally known as Historic Preservation Month. Historic Preservation Month was first celebrated in 1973 to promote historic places for the purpose of instilling national and community pride, promoting heritage tourism, and showing the social and economic benefits of historic preservation. The National Trust for Historic Places for the past 75 years has led the movement to save America's historic places. This year, they are celebrating the power of place and the countless ways, big and small, that preservation creates. According to the Trust, the work we do here, like doing the symposium tonight, strengthens community, breathes life into neighborhoods, supports a healthy planet, and builds a more just and connected society. Historic Preservation Month is your chance to show why this work matters. It's an opportunity to share the impact you're making here to protect what you enjoy by sparking wonder and connecting us to our shared history in ways that shape our future. Here in Bluffton, we are making our own impact on preserving our shared history and shaping our future. One of the ways we are doing this is found in this year's theme, Protecting Bluffton through Historic Preservation Grants. But before we start our program, I'd like to give a special welcome to Town Council, members of the Historic Preservation Commission, Historic Bluffton Foundation, Campbell Chapel AME Church, and several property owners who received grants through the town. I'd like to thank you for Emmett and Teddy McCracken, Debbie and Rusty Pistachio, and Bob and Sherry Coburn. And we really want to especially thank those who are watching us tonight on BCTV. Thank you for joining us. We hope you picked up a program for this evening's symposium. However, if you didn't, please raise your hand and we can get you one. They'll be bringing them to you. We have also provided feedback cards, and we really hope that you will give us your comments so you can fill them out and then drop them in the basket on your way out. As most of you are aware, the town of Bluffton recently opened the new Welcome Center at the Squire Pope Carriage House. If you haven't visited, please take this as your personal invitation to go and see the new gateway to the town of Bluffton for yourselves. As part of the visitor's experience, Hot Metal Media out of Pittsburgh has produced several new videos for the Welcome Center. We've been playing the Welcome Center videos here in Town Hall as well. Tonight, we're going to share with you one of our favorite videos called The Love Letters to Bluffton.
One thing is constant, is the May River has defined Bluffton in my youth, and it still does today.
You see it as a state of mind. It is a state of mind.
There's water that are called names like Beaufort River, Broad River.
So that Bluffton state of mind is revolving around the river, getting out on the river to see the marsh grass and the waterway and seeing the differences that make us special.
You know, we do have a lot of local farms and we have access to the May River. That makes the culinary scene very exciting and offers a wide array of opportunity to create fabulous recipes.
And the South means different races. I think that's just a positive, that we have been able to adapt to the fast growing changes that has come to the Bluffton area.
I think it's important for any town, and particularly Bluffton, to have these buildings preserved because it's markers of history.
But also understanding that time and technology advances, and so we need to react to that as well. And we can kind of push the limits a little bit, but still keep to our history and our past and use those as guidelines.
I'm gonna say it like my grandmother used to say it in color, that we been here, y'all for come here. So that means we are the older ones here, you are the new ones coming in.
Look at the river over a span of 6 hours or over a season. Something's going on greater than ourselves. I think the river defines a good bit of that.
And now I'd like to introduce our town manager, Stephen Stees, for a few words.
Thank you, Lindy. For those that don't know, I'm filling in for Mayor Toomer. He had a death in the family this week and was unable to be here. So I'm not Mayor Toomer, but so I just want to thank you all for being here. My name is Stephen Stees. I'm the town manager for Bluffton. And tonight we're here to celebrate historic preservation and why that matters in our town. It's very important to Bluffton, as you can see, as you heard with the what we've done with Squire Pope, what we're getting ready to do with Sarah Riley Hooks, the Garvey. Preserving history and the historic buildings in the town is a passion for the town and one of our driving goals. As Lindy mentioned, it is Historic Preservation Month, and the power of place, which celebrates how preservation strengthens communities, breathes life in the neighborhood, supports a healthier planet, and builds more in a just and connected society is a theme of this year and what we're here to celebrate. One of the things we started in 2022 was our Historic Preservation Grant Program, and I know Mayor Solka is back there, and she's one of the main reasons we have that program, because, again, preservation of our historic properties in the town and our contributing structures is a passion of our council. And one of the ways we wanted to do that was to encourage people to continue to upkeep and understand that that cost to preserve historic property is much higher than just preserving your own home. So we created the grant programs, and to date, we've totaled more than $250,000 that has gone to help preserve historic places for future generations in our community. Together, the efforts of the town and everyone attending the symposium play a crucial part in preserving and celebrating the town's history and culture. Lindy kind of touched on some of our special guests, but I do want to specifically welcome the members of our Historic Preservation Commission that may be here tonight. If you would, raise your hand if you serve on our HPC. Thank y'all. I also would like to recognize the members of our Growth Management Department that works to ensure that our historic district is upkept through codes and enforcement. So if y'all would stand or raise your hand so you can be recognized, I'd appreciate it. And lastly, I'd like to recognize a special guest we have tonight as part of the symposium. We have the Hayward House Museum and the Campbell Chapel AME Church. If y'all would raise your hand to be recognized. Didn't get a chance to speak with representatives of those groups before in the welcome reception, please do so afterwards after the presentations are done. With that, I would like to thank you all for being here. This is our 10th annual symposium, and I hope we continue doing it for many, many years to come. And I will turn it over back to Lindy. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So Stephen touched on the fact that the Historic Preservation Grant Program was actually started in 2022 by Town Council. And this is so important to the town because it helps the owners of the contributing resources in Old Town Bluffton Historic District to rehabilitate, restore, and preserve their structures and prevent them from being lost to disrepair or abandonment. These historic structures help make Bluffton what is special about Bluffton today. And I'm positive that all of you here today want to see the structures be around for our generations to come. Our historic preservationist, Glenn Umberger, who administers the grant program, will be speaking tonight about the program and the impact it has already had on preserving some of our architectural treasures. For those of you who have not met Glenn, he has been the historic preservationist for the town since July of 2021. He oversees historic preservation activities for the Old Town Bluffton Historic District. Originally, Glenn was from Philadelphia. He holds a Master of Fine Arts and Architectural History from Savannah College of Art and Design. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Delaware. He was formerly the manager of the special projects for the New York Landmarks Conservancy. He was an adjunct lecturer at New York University in New York. Prior to that, Glenn was a docent and lecturer at Philadelphia City Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a historic landmark Gwen, please come to the podium.
Thank you, Mindy. For those of us that call the South Carolina Low Country home, we know this is a very special place with a rich history and culture. Tracing back to the early 1800s, Bluffton's original 1 square mile village is today known as the Old Town Bluffton Historic District, which retains a charming collection of historic structures, several of which survived the burning of Bluffton on Thursday, June 4th, 1863, when Union troops ransacked the town during the United States Civil War. Recognizing the importance of these structures, in 1994, the town conducted its first historic resources survey, which led to the Bluffton Historic District being listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 1996. A decade later, on June 19th, 2007, the local Old Town Bluffton Historic District was established by Town Council that today is comprised of 86 contributing resources identified by the number tags on this map. Now, by definition, a contributing resource is any building, structure, site, object, feature, or open space that adds to the historic associations, architectural qualities, or archaeological values that relate to the documented significance of the district. According to our adopted comprehensive plan, Bluffton's contributing resources are physical remnants of our past, and the preservation of these buildings generates tourism, supports the local economy, and creates a stronger community identity, which residents and business owners are proud. Now, I'm sure it would not come as a complete surprise that the preservation of Bluffton's contributing resources take time and money, and sometimes a lot of both. However, this fact presents certain challenges to some private property owners who may lack the financial resources to undertake such a project on their own. Recognizing this, in 2021, Town Council directed staff to develop a set of financial incentives in order to assist owners of these contributing resources to preserve, restore, or rehabilitate their structures, and to prevent those from being lost to disrepair or abandonment. The result was the Town of Bluffton Historic Preservation Grant Program. When we first set out to create a program, we didn't want to have to reinvent the wheel, so we started by looking at a wide variety of federal, state, and local grant programs associated with historic preservation for inspiration. Using these programs as a guide and having productive conversations with colleagues from other South Carolina municipalities, we created a program that has 2 pathways, one for residential structures, the other for non-residential, or institutional, educational, cultural, or commercial structures. As a point of clarification, any contributing resource to the Old Town Bluffton Historic District that is classified as a site, object, feature, or open space, like the Hayward Cove seen here, does not qualify under this particular program. Grants are solely available for buildings or structures. While the essence of the 2 tracks is the same, that is to preserve, restore, or rehabilitate a contributing resource, there are some minor differences between the 2 grant-funded projects, or defined as qualified expenditures under the program based on how the property is used, whether it's for residential or commercial purposes. For example, qualified expenditures for residential properties include things like roof repair or replacement, porch or stair repair, foundation repair, siding, exterior repairs, including exterior painting, window repair, but not replacement, fascia soffit repairs, tree mitigation, and/or any disability-related renovations. Grants in this category are capped at $30,000 per fiscal year, with a maximum award of $60,000 over a 5-year period, beginning with the date that the first grant is awarded. For non-residential properties, qualified expenditures include things like improvements located on or within the contributing resource, improvements that are necessary to make the structure more fully usable, but are not limited or habitable floor space attributed to new construction, architectural or engineering services that are attributed to the design of the qualified improvement. Those are capped at 20% of the total cost of the project, and/or costs necessary to remain the historic integrity of the contributing resource itself. For non-residential grants, there's also a requirement for a 25% matching funds. Grants in this category are capped at $20,000 per fiscal year, with a maximum award of $60,000 over a 10-year period, beginning with the date that the grant is first awarded. Now, I should point out that this is a reimbursement program. That is to say, an owner will first pay their contract directly, and once the work has been completed and inspected, they will submit copies of their paid invoices along with proof of payments to complete their application packet. Of course, moving from a theoretical plan to a practical program presented some initial challenges, especially since we had never done this before. We needed to create a program and then set up the mechanism by which the program would function. It's one thing to say, okay, let's give owner X some money to fix their house. It's quite another thing to actually make it work. But you may be asking, how does it actually work? Well, to be honest, in early 2022, we really weren't sure it would. We already had a process in place to review and approve applications for a certificate of appropriateness, what we call COFAs, since we love our acronyms so much, as contained in our Unified Development Ordinance, or our UDO, which is a prerequisite for receiving any of our grants. But we also needed a standard operating procedure in order to review and approve the grant applications in a timely and in a consistent way. So we borrowed the following criteria to evaluate all grant applications. We look at historical significance. Primarily, is it a contributing resource? If not, should it be? The level of threat. What are the immediate or long-term threats to the property? Is the roof about to collapse, for example? For non-residential applications, we looked at the public benefit. How will the public benefit directly from this project? We look at the budget. Is it detailed? Is it reasonable? And for non-residential applications, we need to see the proof of matching funds. The project as a catalyst. How will the project create more historic preservation in Bluffton? Will the next door neighbor decide or be inspired to undertake a project of their own? And again, for nonprofit, institutional, or educational organizations, is there an educational component to the project? Will it increase public awareness and involvement in historic preservation? We look at the qualifications of the personnel. What are their relevant experiences, knowledge, and skills of the people involved to ensure that the work will be properly completed? And do they hold a local business license? Partnerships. Are other entities involved with and support the project? The quality of the proposal. Is it feasible? Will the project actually work? And is it timely for implementation? And grant history. Have they had any other previous historic preservation grants through the town? And were there any issues? And finally, ongoing effort. How will the structure be maintained in the future? Is there a plan to keep it looking good? And then there's the fine print. We also require for residential applications that the property is not currently listed for sale and that the owner is current on their real estate taxes. And for non-residential applications, those same conditions apply with the addition that has the entire entity been in operation for more than a year, and has the applicant provided some proof of the 25% matching grant. But regardless of the property's use, all potential grantees need to submit a formal grant application, meet all the program requirements, and all grant-funded projects will need to be reviewed for appropriateness pursuant to the UDO. As part of the program, we also place a public notice yard sign at the property. We call this our free advertising. And period inspections are conducted to document the process for compliance. Now, once the project is complete, the grant application is actually processed. Is it complete? Are all the documents attached? Are all the invoices paid? Do all the numbers add up? We had one application that was off by 40 cents, which we made sure was included in the final check. Did the project meet all the requirements? Did it meet all the requirements under the approved certificate of appropriateness? Or did they do what they said they were going to do? Are there any other outstanding issues that need to be resolved? One important legal requirement is the preparation and the execution of a preservation easement, which includes a set of photographs of the finished product that serves as baseline documentation, or Exhibit B, to the easement. The easement is filed with Beaufort County Recorder of Deeds within 60 days of the check being presented. But perhaps the most fun and rewarding part of the whole process is the big check giveaway presentation, where we literally hand over a big check that they don't get to keep, and the town issues a media release. The program was adopted by Town Council at their meeting on December 14th, 2021, with an effective date of January 1, 2022, with funding provided through the general operating funds. The program was initially funded in the town's budget with a $90,000 line item. Once the Historic Preservation Grant Program went into effect, we began to contact the owners of all the contributing resources in the Old Town Bluffton Historic District, or the buildings and the structures that apply, to let them know that they would be eligible to receive a preservation grant. We also created 2 applications, one for residential and one for everything else, including nonprofit, educational, institutional, cultural, commercial use type structures. These applications outline the process, the criteria, and a list of qualifying expenditures permitted under the program. We now also include a draft copy of the preservation easement in that packet so that potential grantees can seek legal and/or financial counsel if they desire to do so. Since we already had a database of owners of contributing resources, we invited them here to Town Hall for an open house, which was held almost 3 years ago tonight on Thursday, May 12th, 2022. 16 owners attended, including 4 who would eventually become grantees under the program. So at this point, I thought it might be interesting to showcase what we have managed to accomplish thus far. So here we go. Grant number 1. Built in 1841 by John Cole, the owner of the Moreland Plantation near present-day Palmetto Bluff, with later 19th and early 20th century additions, the Hayward House is currently owned by the Historic Bluffton Foundation. For a timber frame structure that has stood and weathered many storms for nearly 200 years, by early 2022, the house was in need of some repairs to the exterior wood siding, needed restoration of several windows, and a new exterior paint job. With the rising cost of labor and materials, and with a strong desire to maintain the historic integrity of the structure, the Historic Bluffton Foundation submitted the first application for a Town of Bluffton Preservation Grant in August of 2022. In their application, the foundation stated, as one of the first to receive this grant, this project will show how important historic preservation is to our foundation, as well as to the Town of Bluffton. The time and effort it takes to undergo a project of this nature alone will serve as a promotion of historic preservation efforts. This project serves as the footprint of our mission to protect, preserve, and promote the history and cultural heritage of the Town of Bluffton. The grant received preliminary approval. All permits were issued in mid-September. But during the course of completing the project, additional damage was discovered in one of the rear brick foundation piers, which was subsequently repaired. While not part of the original scope of the work, these repairs were still considered to be qualified expenditures, and the grant application was amended to include those items as well. When the work was completed and after final inspection, the grant application was processed. We awarded the $20,000 check on a rather cold December afternoon, and since this was our very first grant application, we didn't yet have a big check to give away, but $20,000 was still a big check that the Board of Directors was happy to take off our hands. We also executed a preservation easement that was filed with Beaufort County. Needless to say, the foundation was quite pleased with the results and was grateful for the financial assistance to complete the project. But that's not the end of this story. Apparently, it was a rather slow news day in Savannah. So our friends at Fox 28 came out to interview us about the successful completion of the first project under the new Historic Preservation Grant Program. Grant number 2. Constructed in 1965 as the town's first purpose-built post office, this iconic structure seen on the left in this photograph from the mid-1980s was not eligible for the Historic Preservation Grant when the program began. But when the new owners came in front of the Historic Preservation Commission in February 22 to receive a COFA, or Certificate of Appropriateness, to rehabilitate the structure, we thought it should be a contributing resource and hence eligible for a Historic Preservation Grant. And Town Council agreed with us and officially designated it as a contributing resource in May of 2022, making it one of 2 new additions to the list of contributing resources, the first addition since the list was first created in 2008. As a new contributing resource, the old post office was now officially eligible for the grant program. While the approved COFA included the addition of approximately 500 square feet to the rear of the structure, along with a new screened porch on the eastern elevation, the qualifying expenditures for the grant were limited to the historic brick box, and not for any work that would be considered new construction. In this case, the grant application specified that it would be used for roof repair and replacement. And while the gable end roof was not original to the structure, the 1965 era roof was a flat roof, the owner sought to maintain the look of the building as it had been since the early 1970s. During demolition, the original flat roof was uncovered intact, and I had the opportunity to take a closer look at it. Of course, this is the type of photograph that I do not show to my mom. While the roof was reconstructed, the entire project was not yet complete. However, the work on this specific qualifying expenditure, or roof repair or replacement, was deemed to be finished, and the owners provided us with paid invoices in the amount of $30,000. The grant application was processed. Now, while we always prefer to present the big check to owners in front of the finished product, and since we now actually had a big check to give away, we held a presentation and photo op here inside Town Hall due to inclement weather that day. Even so, the owners and the dogs were very pleased with the results and offered the following review. For those looking to rehabilitate a contributing resource, this is a tremendous program the town has in place to help preserve the unique character of Bluffton. Grant number 3. Since grants are tied to an individual contributing resource and not to an owner, if an owner has multiple contributing resources, in theory, they can submit several applications at the same time, one for each contributing resource that they own. But we're always mindful that we have limitations in our funding, and since there are potentially 84 structures that may need grant, and potentially all at the same time, an owner may be limited to receiving only one grant at a time. It depends on the availability of funds and the number of applications in the queue. In April 2023, the Historic Bluffton Foundation applied for their second grant, this time for the preservation of the slave quarters, which was described in the 1996 Bluffton Historic District National Register nomination as one of two significant outbuildings on the property, a one-story weatherboard slave cabin with wood stump foundation and a one-story framed kitchen building. Now, over the last 183 years or so, the cabin has undergone several significant changes. For example, during the Cedar Keys hurricane that ravaged the area in September of 1896, the cabin's front porch with its shed roof was destroyed and never reconstructed. The original chimney that once stood on the northern elevation is also no longer extant. The original tree stump foundation piers were replaced by short whitewashed brick ones. At one point, double hung windows with glass panes were installed and then later removed from the window openings. In the early 2000s, some of the exterior wood siding and roofing materials were replaced, yet in spite of all these changes, the structure retains approximately 60% of its original materials. As part of the ongoing stewardship of its property, the Historic Bluffton Foundation applied for a grant as part of a comprehensive exterior restoration project to breathe new life into the cabin that, according to the foundation, will educate the public on the history of the enslaved person in the Bluffton area, to raise awareness of the need to preserve and protect historic sites, and to foster an appreciation of African American history, culture, and contributions. In June 2023, we awarded a grant in the amount of $12,075 toward the cost of completing this important project to ensure that the story of the cabin and its former inhabitants remains for future generations to discover. And just like with an earlier grant to Hayward House, I suppose it was another rather slow news day in Savannah, but this time our friends at WJCL 22 picked up the story and came out to see the preservation efforts funded by this grant. Grant number 4. One of my favorite structures in Old Town is the Planters Mercantile on Calhoun Street, seen here in a historic image from the 1930s. Constructed around 1890 by brothers Moses Potts and his young brother Abraham, the Patz brothers were born in Lithuania, who immigrated to the United States in 1884 and first settled in New York. They came to South Carolina around 1890 and established a mercantile business on Bluffton's main commercial thoroughfare that, according to contemporary advertisements, sold a rather diverse selection of merchandise, including clothing, dry goods, boots, shoes, hats, groceries, furniture, wagons, buggies, and harness, sewing machines, trunks, satchels, cigars, feed, grits and flour, a specialty, boat supplies, coffins, and fixtures. The brothers even owned their own private steamship that they used to bring in goods from Savannah and Charleston. One of the building's special features was a service elevator, which, although no longer functional, remains inside to the present day. When the property changed hands in January of 2023, the new owners approached us with some plans to fix up the place. They applied for a $20,000 preservation grant in May for exterior siding repairs and painting. While the previous owner had attended our open house, and we had discussed a grant application for roof repair, he ultimately chose not to pursue a grant at that time. Now, this was one of those rare cases where the owners got a bit too excited and started the work without getting all the proper permits in place. But that was quickly resolved and the work proceeded without any further delay. And the results were remarkable. This time, we were able to present the big check to the new owners out in front of the Planters Mercantile on Calhoun Street, who were grateful for the financial and technical assistance needed to restore the building's exterior architectural elements. And they provided a nice review for us. It was very nice to see the old building come back to life and to be a part of preserving history. We loved hearing all the positive feedback from our customers and visitors when they saw the restoration. Grant number 5. The old schoolhouse around the corner from here was originally constructed around 1868 as a private residence and later served Beaufort County School District number 2 until the district sold the building on August 1910 to Margaret Williams, who turned the one-room schoolhouse back into a private residence. The structure was later expanded, likely around 1935, to approximately 1,100 square feet. Like most timber frame structures in the Low Country, the foundation was comprised of old tree stumps that were set into sandy soil. And after years of living in a lopsided house, the owner, who attended our open house, reached out for a grant application in June 2023, specifically for needed foundation repairs, with the anticipation that additional structure work may also be required. As we suspected, the installation of the new settle-stop IntelliJack foundation piers required the replacement of approximately 50 feet of damaged structural beams. Work was completed in about 6 weeks, and while the total cost of the foundation repairs exceeded the limits of the grant, the owner was able to pay the additional amount out of pocket. I should mention here that unlike the previous grants awarded, this one was for foundation work that is not readily visible, but the work was still very important since the old schoolhouse is now more stable than it has ever been, thanks to this structural upgrade. As I've already mentioned, The weather for the Big Check giveaway is not always ideal, but this time we held the presentation in front of the fully stabilized structure on a rather hot summer morning. And in the end, the homeowner was so grateful for the opportunity to stabilize the old one-room schoolhouse, and she highly recommends this program to owners of other historic Bluffton properties. Grant number 6. Our 6th grant application came from the longtime owners of the Guilford House, a 1,200 square foot timber frame cottage constructed around 1935 at the corner of Boundary and Bridge Streets. Typical of Bluffton cottages from this era, the house features a full-width front porch set on brick piers and accessed by wooden steps. The owners, who had also attended our open house launch event, applied for a grant to repair the porch piers, replace the decking, repair wood siding, and exterior paint. While the original plan also included repairs to the rear porch, due to the cost of the project, the scope of the work was limited to the front porch, steps, and nearby exterior siding. Work on this project progressed rather quickly, with work to the underlining porch structure, in-kind replacement of damaged decking, and repairs to the exterior siding. The porch steps were also completely rebuilt to current building code in a more historically appropriate wood material. The project was completed in early December, with the Big Check giveaway held on a very chilly December morning just after Christmas. The owners, of course, were very grateful for the financial assistance in preserving their home. As far as grant projects go, this one was fairly straightforward, and no major issues were encountered. And the final results have had a large impact on promoting historic preservation, since the cottage sits on a very visible corner in the historic district. Grant number 7. One of the restrictions of the grant program is that an owner of a residential property is limited to 1 grant per fiscal year, with a maximum of 2 in a 5-year period from the date that the first grant is awarded. So the owners of the old post office building, who were undertaking a substantial multi-year rehabilitation project, took advantage of the calendar. In essence, they were able to get 2 grants for one contributing resource in the same calendar year, but in different fiscal years. The first grant for the roof replacement was awarded in May 2023, and around December 2023, the owners submitted a second grant application, this time for the restoration of the aluminum framed front windows and glass entry door, and the restoration of the historic windows on the eastern and western elevations of the structure. Again, grant funds are only allowed for qualified expenditures for the historic portion of the building and not for new construction. While the glass in the windows and the doors was replaced, the historic aluminum framing members were retained and restored to maintain the original look of the brick facade, and the result was quite impressive. But unlike the Big Check giveaway that we held for the first grant inside Town Hall, the second Big Check giveaway was done in front of a nearly complete structure, and we specifically invited the dogs back for the occasion. The owners, now 2-time grantees, provided us with another 5-star review. Originally constructed in 1965 with little or no mechanical upgrades throughout the years, bringing the building up to code and transforming it into a home was financially daunting. Thankfully, the town supports its initiatives to preserve its unique and historic structures, not just through talk, but by providing meaningful assistance of grants. Grant number 8. One of the oldest surviving residences in Bluffton, the Card House, was constructed around 1825. While we no longer have records about the actual date of construction, we do know that William Graham owned the property in 1847, and that Ephraim Baynard family lived in the house following the Civil War. The house gets its unusual name not from its owner, but from a high stakes poker game held in the house in the 1840s, during which William Baynard, as the story goes, won the deed to the 1,000-acre Braddock's Point plantation on Hilton Head from Colonel John Stoney. Later additions were made to the house, but the historic structure seen here lacked proper foundations, and the grant was awarded to install new settle-stop IntelliJack foundation piers under the original exterior walls of the house, adjacent to the modern addition. This was to ensure that the historic structure would remain standing for the next 200 years. In this case, the work was done while a kitchen renovation project was being finished in another part of the house, but the qualified expenditures for the grant were limited to the new foundation work, which all happened to be behind the brick piers. While the work was being completed, we were able to process the grant application for $29,548. Now, usually we try to help the grantees max out the amount at $30,000 for residential applications with additional qualified expenditures, but in this case, the amount came in just under the maximum allowed, and the owners were thrilled with the grant. We arranged for the Big Check giveaway photo op on a picture-perfect low-country spring morning. Grant number 9. Constructed in 1854 in a vernacular Greek revival style, the Bluffton Methodist Church was sold to 9 formerly enslaved congregants in 1874, at which time the Campbell Chapel AME Church was founded. The chapel survived the burning of Bluffton in June 1863 and various natural disasters since, including a tornado in 1933 and several hurricanes. Campbell Chapel AME was listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 2019, received a South Carolina State Historical Marker in 2022, and was added to the Reconstruction Era National Historic Network in May of 2023. On June 7th, 2023, our Historic Preservation Commission, or our HPC, approved a Certificate of Appropriateness, or a COFA, to allow for the demolition of the non-historic, non-contributing portion of the building of approximately 2,300 square feet and allow the construction of a new one-story freestanding addition of approximately 600 feet at the rear and to rehabilitate the historic 1,800 square foot contributing resource. Now, applications for grants for non-residential properties have a provision for reimbursing architectural or engineering fees attributed to the design of the qualified improvements. And again, those costs are capped at 20% of the total rehabilitation cost. This particular grant covered initial engineering and architect's fees required to stabilize the historic 1,800 square foot structure before the selective demolition, the new construction of the rear addition, and the rehabilitation can proceed. And since this will be a multi-year project, Campbell Chapel was eligible to apply for another grant after July 1st, again for qualifying expenditures related only to the rehabilitation of the historic timber frame structure. We were very honored to do the Big Check giveaway on a warm and sunny afternoon. Grant number 10. And just like the owners of the old post office, Campbell Chapel applied for a second historic preservation grant, this time to help pay for the fabrication of custom windows and jib doors as part of the larger rehabilitation of the historic structure. As these are character-defining architectural elements, which will replace non-historic aluminum windows, this grant funded the replacement of these distinctive features. We can't wait to see them installed, so stay tuned for the updates as this project continues. Of course, we were very pleased to do the second Big Check giveaway just a few weeks ago. Grant number 11. At the end of 2024, the Historic Bluffton Foundation applied for a second grant, this time to help with the cost of fabricating and installing custom window shutters. In their application, the foundation stated that this project will improve the Hayward House's authenticity, making it a more compelling and accurate resource for educating residents and visitors about local history. The project was recently completed, and I will hope you take a moment this evening to check it out during this evening's reception. And of course, we had another Big Check giveaway with staff and board members to celebrate the occasion. Grant number 12. This one is so new it didn't even make this evening's program, but our 12th grant was awarded for a public project to repaint the historic 1870s Garvey House located over in Oyster Factory Park. You may recall that this house underwent an extensive rehabilitation several years ago, but recently we noticed that it started to need some attention. Since the town is the custodian of this resource, and not the owner, which is Beaufort County, we used $11,149.62 from the Historic Preservation Grant Program to pay for these exterior repairs and for repainting. Since there was no big check giveaway, since we were technically giving the check to ourselves, we still completed all the proper paperwork just as if it was a private owner. And tonight we brought the big check giveaway right here to Town Hall. And if you notice, if you look closely, the check looks a little bit smaller than the big check giveaway. We are actually unveiling tonight our first brand new big check in a smaller version for the grant program. Which is a nice segue into what I call coming soon. We have one pending grant application for exterior painting at the Bluff on Pritchard Street. That project is almost complete, and we anticipate awarding our new big check in a smaller variety before the end of the current fiscal year. So stay tuned for that one as well. Since the program began a bit over 2 years ago, we have awarded a grand total of $267,839.52 in grants to preserve 9 individual contributing resources to the Old Town Bluffton Historic District. That doesn't count the Bluff project, which the check has not been cut yet. But in conclusion, I would like to leave you with a few takeaways. It's safe to say that the grant programs promote historic preservation as illustrated by these examples of successful projects funded by our program. And I would imagine that most, if not all of them, would not have been undertaken without the town's financial assistance. Preservation grants are an investment in the future. I sometimes imagine if Bluffton had such a program 20 years ago, what non-extant contributing resources may have been saved from being lost to disrepair or abandonment. And if you own a contributing resource and have a project that may qualify for a grant, I would love to chat with you about how the town may be able to help you rehabilitate, restore, or preserve your property for future Blufftonians to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. That was a great presentation. We have a couple minutes left if there are any questions from the audience. If anybody would like to maybe ask Glenn a couple questions, I have a microphone if you feel like you need a microphone. If not, you're welcome to raise your hand and he'll call on you.
It's gonna fall. Thank you. I was just wondering what would happen if somebody didn't have the resources in order to put the money up front and then be reimbursed? Because I know there's a lot of structures around there. That might be a really naive question, but that's my question.
It would really depend on what the project is. If it's a larger project, there might be a way to phase the project in different phases or smaller pieces that they might be able to afford. We also might be able to find other funding sources that might be available depending on what the property is. But we will do everything to work with an owner to find funding when we can.
Excellent, thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
That was a good question, by the way, thank you. Well, I did a really good job. There's no
I thought I was late, I didn't know this on my hand, anyway, I almost forgot the question. What's the status of the Michael Riley house? I've lost the bubble on that.
Okay. So the Michael Riley, Sarah Riley Hooks Cottage project, Town Council approved the selection of the contractors for that. Today's Thursday, that was Tuesday. Work will begin imminently. The project will involve the demolition of the current structure and new construction to replicate the historic building to the look that Mr. Riley would recognize for a public use. So that project will be coming soon. I anticipate completion probably within the next, well, probably 2 years, though my crystal ball is in the shop, so don't quote me on that. Any other questions?
Debbie.
I should have said grantee, I shouldn't be asking questions.
Is there a current structure in town that the town is eyeballing that maybe could take advantage of this program?
Good question. I have a list of all the contributing resources and various potential issues with each one. I will sometimes reach out to those owners and say, hey, have you thought about a grant for fill in the blank? So yes, we do keep an eye on those. But also homeowners or owners of contributing resources don't always let us know. So I rely on our yard signs that advertise the program and events like this to get the word out so they can take advantage of that. No other questions? Well, with that, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to my colleague, Lindy.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Lucky for you, the evening is not over. We welcome you to please join us at the Hayward House for a reception located just down the block at 70 Boundary Street. You're welcome to walk over and enjoy some refreshments, and we thank you for coming tonight. We hope you learned something. Thank you.